Good afternoon, everyone. This is Carl Marrelli with SANS. We've got a pretty healthy group so far, but I know we have a lot more joining. So we're going to give folks a few minutes. We started right at the top of the hour, and we will. I'll jump back on in about a minute and a half or so and see where we're at and get this thing kicked off. All right, we've got a few more people joining, and our other panelist is dialing in right now. As soon as he gets in, we will check his audio and check our attendees and get rolling. So just hang tight, maybe 60, 90 more seconds, and we will get moving here. All right, Serge, I see your audio is connected. Can we do a quick mic check and then we'll kick off?
Mic check 1 2. Mic check 1 2.
You sound great. All right, I'm going to give folks 60 more seconds. We will start in 60 seconds. I know we've got a lot of attendees registered, and I'm seeing people come in now, so we'll get started in 60 seconds. Hang tight. All right, everyone, we are going to kick off. Hello, my name is Carl Marrelli. I am the head of product for SANS Digital, which includes SANS Security Awareness. I'm really excited to host you all today. You'll be hearing a little bit more from me later, but we're really excited to have Serge Borso join us. And the majority of this call is going to really focus on his very unique perspective in making sure that we're building secure web applications, and how do we really approach that, and what does the OWASP Top 10 mean to you and your organization. So we're going to dive right in here quickly. A couple housekeeping items from the start, though. We do have both a chat panel and a Q&A panel. Most people like to send in their questions via the chat, so if you could do that, that would be great. We are going to pause after Serge to make sure that we can field questions specifically related to the content, any technical depth that you want to get into with Serge. Serge is going to have the mic for the majority of this time, and then we're going to shift on the back end and talk a little bit about how we at SANS Security Awareness approach secure application development training, best practices for building a secure application development training program, and a little bit about what you can expect from our product next year. So with that, oh, look, there's an agenda slide. I forgot to put that up. Here we go. So we're going to be taking a look at our experts, our content library, the OWASP Top 10. Like I said, Serge is going to dive in pretty deep on this, which is great. We're so pleased to have him. And then we're going to take a look at role-based training and, like I said, Q&A. So we'll break up the Q&A into two, one right after Serge is done, and then one after the rest of us go. Our speakers today, you've already met me. I'm Carl Marrelli, the head of product. Serge Borso is joining us. He's actually fresh in a SANS course right now, teaching a SANS course this very week, is joining us from in between a break on that, which is great. Thanks, Serge, for joining. He's a certified SANS instructor. He'll tell you all about himself in a minute. He's the president of the OWASP chapter in Denver. Just really, really awesome guy. We're having a great time working with him. And then Jacque Kakareka is also on with us. She is our director of operations and success, and she's going to tell you all about program development, looking at your secure application skill set, and your roles in your organization, and how do we best equip them to ensure that we are writing and securing our code, particularly applications that we are publishing to our clients. So with that, we are going to get started with Serge. And Serge, I'm going to drive the slides, so don't feel rude at all if you tell me when to go next. Just let me know, and I will move on to the next slide. Serge, the floor is yours.
Sounds good. Thanks a lot for that, Carl. I appreciate it. And welcome, everyone. I'm happy to be here. Believe it or not. Yeah, teaching a SANS class this week, and this is my lunch break, so this is exciting times. But stuff has changed. OWASP Top 10, let's get into it. So let's check out exactly what this means. We have the old list of 2017, the new list. If you're not familiar with OWASP Top 10, then you joined the wrong webinar, number one. No, I'm joking. But in all seriousness, that list does change every 3 to 4 years. It looks like we're on kind of a 4-year cycle based on the last 2 releases of this. The 2021 list, you can see there's not really anything that was a pure, let's just shift from 2017 to 2021. So you see the A01 category, it used to be injection, that's moved over to, well, I'm not going to read it, you can see it for yourself, but generally speaking, injection is still there. Broken authentication is still there. The couple things have moved up. That's what those arrows actually mean. What's new, what's migrated or shifted into one category. Cross-site scripting, for example, has always really been an injection type of attack. So that's been added to the injection category. What this means for your business, I think a lot of you probably have a fair understanding of that, depending on what role you're in. So clearly we don't have unlimited amounts of time to go through every single one of these in great detail, but we will definitely talk about all of these to an extent. So broken access control, there's a good reason why that's number 1 right now. And it used to be, as you can see, number 5 on the list. We're talking when someone accesses your application, and let me pause right there. This is specific to web applications. OWASP does have a top 10 list for APIs. They have a top 10 list for mobile applications. This is a top 10 list for web applications. Top 10 meaning the most common, impactful attacks and weaknesses that we see in the real world. That's what this top 10 list is comprised of. It's not based on, oh, this is what I feel like today. This is based on years of industry feedback. That's why it takes 4 years for this to come through. This is a fairly open process where OWASP as a foundation will reach out to the community, reach out to organizations in general, and ask, what are you seeing in your environment? Let's get some metrics. Let's get some data behind these numbers. Let's get some real information we can move forward with and come to an agreement on what we feel is the new number 1, which is a big deal because injection has been number 1 since I believe the inception of this list. This isn't just like this started back in 2017. This list has been around for quite some time. Okay, so injection moving down to number 3 is actually quite a big deal. That's a little bit of background about the list, the foundation itself of OWASP. You know, this is one of the flagship main things that they come out with. OWASP does a lot of cool things, but this is what we're going to focus on for now. So broken access control, once someone logs into the application, what are you able to do? What access do you have? And what failures do we maybe have in our code base that are opening up those avenues of attack and exploit for the adversary? And this could be something like a regular user is able to escalate privilege and gain access to something they shouldn't have access to at all. That's what we're referring to here. Okay, for cryptographic failures, you see this when you run a scan against your application and say, look, you still have TLS version 1.0 turned on. You have a sensitive information disclosure vulnerability, and that's specific to what should have been a hashed password is now, oh, wait, you didn't didn't hash the password, you encrypted the password, or you hashed it with MD5 like Yahoo did. Now you're the Yahoo, huh? We want to see bcrypt, we want to see scrypt, we want to see multiple rounds, we want to see salting. That's a cryptographic failure, and you see that the old sensitive data exposure category has moved into just a general category of cryptographic failures. Injections moved down, SQL injection, command injection, LDAP, DLL, any type of injection that's relevant for your given application. It's not like it's new by any means. I mentioned that's been on this list for years. That reminds me actually of the old A8 from the previous version, even before 2017, that was cross-site request forgery. We as a community came up with a pretty solid set of multiple solutions to address cross-site request forgery. When the 2017 list came out, that was removed completely from the list. Injection, we have libraries, we have solutions, we have developer training, we have the knowledge we need to address injection-based attacks. That's why it's moved down the list. A lot of those injections aren't working anymore. A lot of websites aren't vulnerable to injection attacks anymore. Okay. For insecure design, that's a new category, hence the parentheses word new next to it. How did you design the application? Who's accessing it? What type of sensitivity do you have within the application? Was it thought through from the perspective of design flaws? So if you're trying to shift left, as we are as an industry, we need to actually start thinking more about threat modeling. If an adversary were to target our application, what would they logically be focused on? Do you have a poorly designed password reset feature, which certainly goes hand in hand with A7, identity and authentication failures? Do you have the type of threat modeling capacity right now to think like an attacker, like an adversary? If someone was trying to attack us right now, would we be able to see it, which is A9, security logging and monitoring failures. And of course, we're talking insecure design, but these are ancillary components, all fall into these basic categories that you see. So it's very real world. What are we doing to address these type of flaws? How are we thinking through this? What threat modeling do we have in place right now to put ourselves in a position where we can account for this type of attack, not just prevent it ideally, but also detect it, take action on it, log it, alert it, make sure it's being sent to the next logical person down the chain so we can take corrective action given the knowledge that we have. What else? We have security misconfigurations. That's not a new category. It's moved up a little bit because we see a lot of, wow, we screwed something up. We misconfigured many different components. You see XXE as the old 2017. There's insecure libraries, which goes hand in hand with our vulnerable and outdated components, which is right next to this category. We're using untrusted third-party libraries, or we haven't vetted that code base, or things along those lines for both those categories. What are we doing for identification and authentication failures? This used to be A2, the category of broken authentication. That's a huge one. To this, even though it's number 7 on the list, I see this almost every single time I do a penetration test. I didn't really get into the background of who I am and what I do, because I've assumed you've Googled me by now, right? I'm just that popular. I'm joking, of course. Penetration testing, offensive security, red teaming. I run a company in Denver, Colorado, doing all that as a SANS instructor, teach cloud computing. In the past, web application penetration testing, Sec 522, defending our application in the cloud. So everything that we're talking about is something I've been doing for well over a decade, right? So when my company, myself, actually perform penetration tests of web applications, definitely seeing A7 pop up consistently, whether they're using Cognito with AWS or a homegrown solution or whatever type of appropriate logging or login process you might have. That goes back to how you reset passwords, how you log someone in, how you account for the account creation process, Can I divulge valid usernames? Can I guess passwords? Do you enforce two-factor authentication? I mean, those things right there, I can tell you 80% of the applications that are tested right now for my organization, some of those things aren't even being done. Probably 80% of them have one or more flaws, as the case may be. Then we have a new category of software and data integrity flaws. Like I said, I probably don't have time to go into super depth on every single one of these. So let me kind of make some other points. Let's go ahead and move to the next slide. And the question comes up, why do we care about this? There are changes. These changes do occur every about 4 years to the top 10 list. It's relevant because it doesn't really matter what industry space we're in or what role we have, depending on, of course, this audience I'm speaking to right now. I'd imagine if you're here listening, then this is relevant to you because you are a cloud security engineer, or you are a developer, or you are focused on application security in one capacity or another. You work for a small company, or you have a small team, and you wear multiple hats. Okay, it's relevant because as this list changes, which it just did, we have to be cognizant of how that's going to impact the security of our infrastructure, of our applications, of the decisions we make of what tools to buy, the decisions we make as far as training our developers, training our security team in general so they can be aware of the impact of these threats in a real world landscape. This list isn't going to change probably for another 4 years, if I had to guess. Okay, so getting ahead of this fairly new change, like this is in the last 6 weeks or so, this finally came out of the new top 10 list for 2021, and it'll be for 2022 and 2023. See my point? The sooner we can get a grip on what the relevancy is for us and our program, our overarching security program, and our knowledge component, the better off we're going to be. Hence the last bullet point here, knowing is half the battle. And we'll get back to that here in just a moment. But really the reality is we have to understand what these threats mean to our business. It's not just a generalized, well, I guess we need to have a SIM in place. It's more of a, yeah, have a SIM for our security logging and monitoring fails, which is A9 on the top 10 list now. And what does it actually mean? Like, what do we log? When someone goes to log into the application and they fail, do we log that? Yeah, probably. When it's successful, do we log that? Sure, we probably should. How are we going to be able to ascertain when an adversary is launching a dictionary attack, a brute force attack, a credential stuffing attack? If it's from one single IP address, not that challenging to do. If it's distributed, if it's low and slow, if it's coming from multiple IP addresses over the course of hours and days, and this adversary or this group of adversaries is simply prodding to see what accounts exist. Okay, now I have a list because a username harvesting vulnerability was apparent. I have a huge list of hundreds or thousands of valid accounts that, end user accounts that log into your application on a daily basis. Now I'm going to launch the credential stuffing attack. Can you see that? Do you have the visibility to see that? Okay, so fair question. That's part of the reason why we care. And we'll move on to the next slide to see where this takes us to. Question comes up, who actually uses this? And as I alluded to a moment ago, we're talking developers, security professionals. You can read the slide for yourself, but everyone pretty much uses this top 10 list. Even folks outside of the AppSec world. As the president of the Denver OWASP chapter, I can tell you when we do a regular meetup and we have presenters come and speak, they're not talking about the OWASP top 10 month after month. We have people coming in and talk about Wi-Fi hacking. We have people coming in talking about cloud security and ransomware. And these people are coming from all different backgrounds. And it's relevant from an OWASP perspective and application security perspective because it all intertwines. It's all connected in one capacity or another. You're focused on cloud security. Awesome. Well, what are you doing in the cloud? Oh, you're running a website. Okay. Among other things, you have an application. You have a mobile application. You're part of the IT team. What does that have to do with OWASP? Well, how you're going to ingrain yourself in the process is, of course, incumbent upon you and your team and your business and your culture. Make no mistake, though, all of these different teams and all different industries out there look to the OWASP Top 10 for guidance to understand what is a real world threat actor focusing on right now as it pertains to what we have running in our environment. And the application layer accounts for a significant portion of vulnerabilities, probably the majority of the vulnerabilities in your environment. Anyone out there doing vulnerability scans will tell you the same thing. Who else does this apply to? Of course, go figure, developers. Okay, the question comes, what are you doing with this information? How are you using this information? Are you incorporating this into your IDE, your SAST, DAS testing, your penetration testing, which of course you may not be directly responsible for, your CI/CD pipeline, your whole concept of shifting left, all those conversations occurring. What about your training? Are you learning the information you need to learn about the OWASP Top 10 and other application layer vulnerabilities and threat modeling and those type of conversations? Are you learning what you need to learn to have and make effective changes in the organization? That's a fair question. Okay, it's not just like this rhetorical, oh well, just think about it. It's more of a, that's real. Shifting left is real. We've been talking about this for a long time. CI/CD pipelines, DevSecOps, these are all real things you may be incorporating into your daily business right now. So we care about this because we're responsible for it, quite frankly. What else we have, Carl? Who's using this? Yeah, after that, real world outcomes. I'm not a huge person on statistics because 82% of all statistics are made up on the spot. But you can easily Google some of this stuff. You can Google some of this stuff yourself if you choose to. There's a link down there at the bottom. That's where a couple of these were obtained from. Every now and then, if you are plugged into threat feeds, or if you're plugged into websites that communicate breaches, and when those type of breaches make headlines, you can see this just as easily yourself. But without a doubt, application-centric vulnerabilities are of significant concern to us. There's reputational outcomes, there's business ending and impacting outcomes, there's revenue outcomes. There are also resume generating outcomes, as in you need, and there's probably better terminology for that, resume generating outcomes, where you need to update your resume because something bad happened. I actually had a penetration test. This was a while ago, probably 2 years ago at least, where myself and my team were going through this application as a WordPress-based application. Pause for all the gasps. I'm well aware, but that's what they're using for their CMS. They're using WordPress, and they had a lot of custom code, though, a lot of custom PHP code. And throughout the course of the penetration test, we're going through making requests to the application. A response came back. It had a 302 redirect in the HTTP headers, but the rest of the body of the page was still being displayed. So if you intercepted that with the right tool, like Burp Suite or the Z-Attack proxy with Zap, you could actually still see like the entire admin page if you just ignored the 302 redirect. And developers, security professionals out there probably know exactly what I'm talking about. If this is over your head, I apologize. The point is, I could redirect that page to make it a 200 response code, and the whole page would load in my browser. I could see the entire admin platform, showed it in the penetration test report, and the developer who wrote that custom code reached out to me afterwards, one-on-one, and said, "You just saved my job. If we had gone live with this and someone had found this in the real world, I would have been fired." I'm not trying to scare anybody. It's just a story that came to my mind. That wasn't pre-thought of. It's real world outcome, and I want to share it with you. What else do we have, Carl?
I'll go to the next slide, but Serge, if I may, one of these items on here strikes me because oftentimes we hear about these things and it's like my name and my email, which is bad enough, right? Because there was a breach, there's PII. But this one talking about store numbers, drug names, shipping addresses of its users, 10 million downloads of the app. This is really significant business impact when we, don't go through the exercise of training our teams to code properly and securely and do the necessary steps of the penetration test, like you're talking about what you and your company do, et cetera. And like, this is serious impact here. And I just wanted to note for all the listeners before I go to the next slide, this is why we have this whole product. This is why we do what we do at SSA, and it's part of our mission, right? And why sometimes when you look at, how's an awareness company doing like developer training? This is precisely why, because these are really big problems in the industry, and they're really big problems for any organization that wants to sell software or have some sort of digital transformation, digital touch point with their customer base. This stuff is really, really, really important. So I probably can't overemphasize that, but I'll stop talking and let you move on, Serge. That one just really struck me. So thanks for showing that.
Absolutely. It's a very valid point that you make, and I appreciate you highlighting that. That's as real world as it gets right there. And that's not just us and our business, it's us and our team. If we wrote that code that ultimately caused something like that to happen, that hurts. A lot of us take pride in what we're doing, and there's a very real need to achieve and to feel good and to feel like we're taking the onus, taking the responsibility upon ourselves to do the best we possibly can, taking pride in what we do. Okay. The other big piece to OWASP top 10 from a security perspective is actually offensive security. That's my company's logo over there on the right-hand side. I figured it might make sense to show that because that's what we do, offensive security. Penetration testing and penetration testers have to be very well versed with the OWASP top 10. Not from a defense perspective, clearly from an offense perspective. What we're accomplishing here with knowledge and training and understanding the details of how this could impact the business, we're also understanding how we could potentially exploit these vulnerabilities, or at least identify them to add value to the business that we're working with. Okay, so anyone here deals with PCI, PCI DSS, 11.3, 6.6, application security review, or web application penetration testing, that's what we're talking about. And the OWASP, of course, top 10 provides guidance not just on here's what this category happens to be, but also here's how you can fix it, here's what we're looking for. Penetration testers are going to naturally gravitate towards that to say, what can I be doing to make sure I'm understanding the true risk to the business? And how can I communicate that to the developers, in-house pen testers, third-party pen testers, creating that report, giving the screenshots, understanding in depth what you're actually doing, not just running a tool, running a scan, getting a report, then throwing over the fence. That's not adding value. Having depth and knowledge and training and experience, that's where you have the value add to understand here's the actual root cause, here's how it can be exploited, here's the impact to the business when that occurs, and this is the information we can share with the development team to get this rectified, or at least some options. Okay, and that's to Carl's point, SSA, awareness, development training, it's a holistic view. And as far as industry standard requirements and back to PCI and HIPAA, other things like that, other regulatory compliance frameworks, we're required to do this. This is not an option. You need to know what OWASP is. You need to know what the top 10 is. You have to understand how to test thoroughly for it, because when an auditor goes in to assess that report, that's a question that's going to come up. Did they test for the OWASP top 10? And if you're showing, yeah, we did, but it's a 2017 list, that's not okay. You got to be staying abreast of the latest and greatest of what's happening in the industry. And this change, the OWASP top 10, is significant. That's why we're taking time to talk about it. All right. And what does this mean? Well, to sum up kind of what I've been talking about, this means it's going to be relevant for us to really take the time to get the training we need in one capacity or another to learn more about this. Okay, and clearly there's an underlying thread here, but in reality, we have something that's new. It's going to be around for years to come. We will be tested against this. The adversaries in the real world are using these attacks already. They're not looking at the list and saying, hey, I'm going to pick number 4 and go with that. It's more of a, based on what we've been seeing over the course of the last several years, this is what's actively being focused on by the adversary in the real world. Therefore, this is what we can use to help shore up our own defenses. So what do? We use the knowledge and we start building some defenses based on this. We also, as you can see in the bullet points here, we want to understand what the risk is going to be, what the impact is going to be, what the threat is going to be, how we quantify that ideally, and then take that from a threat modeling perspective and understand if I were an adversary, or if the adversary, when and if they go to attack our application, what would be the most likely attack that they're going to launch? How can I defend that? Stop it from happening? How can I detect it when it happens? And what controls will I be putting into place to do this? And the big thing I keep going to go back to is education. That's of critical importance for us to be successful with our endeavors. We have to know what's going on. And we'll go to the next slide. Now, I mentioned knowing is half the battle. That's where I'm going with this. Education really is the next step. And depending how far you want to take it, you could be an expert in coding and programming the language or languages that you know about, and your pipeline, how various components and software and solutions fit into that, interacting with other teams to understand what's going on inside of the business as a whole, so you can be staying abreast of changes in not only technology, but maybe budgets, things like that. But knowing, once again, what the application does, who's using it, how it's going to be attacked, having that communication channel between development and security is going to be critical. And then, of course, going back to understanding what this top 10 list is really all about, how you can test for it, how you can defend against it. The OWASP.org website will walk through a lot of that. How do we know that we're being effective, though? That's a very fair question. Okay, we don't want to just go through training, check a box, and say we're good to go. We have to actually apply that knowledge to our code that we write, if you're on the development side of the house, or the attack code that we use if you're on the offensive side of the house. And everyone in between, same concept. We have to understand what this means for audit, what this means for compliance, what this means when someone asks for more budget for a project. How is this going to impact what we're currently working on? How can we secure the business? How can we secure our users? How can we secure our job in some cases? And there's very real world impacts when we start going through this. So the big thing, of course, I always go back to is once you getting that training, getting what you need to be successful, understanding the outcomes, understanding how you can actively change your own behavior, your own skill set, level it up, right? Getting better consistently, spending the time to fully embrace the reality of the situation. You're being attacked. Your application specifically is being attacked right now. Is it publicly facing? It's under attack right now, guaranteed. What are we doing to help reduce the risk of exposure and the risk of compromise? How do we do that? Training, education, continuing that cycle to keep getting better and smarter and applying that knowledge in the real world. That's what I have for you.
Serge, that's fantastic. Really quick for the audience, we're going to break and do some Q&A with Serge before we get to the rest of the agenda. So if you could please drop questions in the chat while I air the first one here that we've got. And I see a few others coming in, so we'll drop them in as we go. So Serge, I'm going to back us up a little bit. And you've mentioned this phrase a few times, shift left or shifting left. There was a question about what that means. You mind answering that for us, please?
Absolutely. So I'll keep it general because audience, once again, we could have marketing, we could have any type of folks on here. We're essentially referring to incorporating security controls and processes, and that could be software, it could be resources, it could be products, incorporating security further or sooner into the development process. So shifting left as in the left-hand side is we're writing code, or we're planning to write code. And the right-hand side is we are in production live running right now. So incorporating security much sooner into the process of our code writing, our code deploy, our scanning, our whatever the case may be. We want to integrate security as soon as we possibly can, and I don't want to say as much as we possibly can, but to the appropriate amount it makes sense. That's what shifting left is. Don't wait till we're live in production and hire someone to do a penetration test. Do that, but also make sure developers have the training and knowledge they need as they are having hands on keyboards writing the code at the very inception of the project, which is the left-hand side. That's what we're referring to.
Yeah, I'll jump in on that too, Serge, if you don't mind, and say, so I've personally been in product management roles for 15, 20 years, something like that at this point. And, back in the early days, I will tell you, people like Serge, I did not like them. And I'll tell you why. Because I would get 30-page pen test reports the day I'm about to ship a product, and it would completely screw up my timeline and all my customer commits and everything like that. And because organizationally, we didn't do that work soon enough in the process, right? And so from my seat, trust me, it's the worst feeling in the world as a product manager when you get that penetration test report and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't ship my product. It is terrible. So there's another aspect of this, in addition to ensuring that we're not exposing our customers' data, which is way more important than the product guy's feelings on the days about to ship a product, for sure. But what we're talking about is organizational impact across the board, right? And this idea of shifting left for a product person is actually music to our ears, because we don't want to get so far down the road where we're like, oh my gosh, we have a problem and we only knew about it at the end, right? And I've talked to many heads of engineering departments, CTOs, CISOs, et cetera, and shifting left is, we use it very casually now, assuming everybody knows it, but this is a very significant effort happening in pretty much every customer I've talked to, and there's work to do, right? And ensuring that all of our folks know the importance of securing our web applications and all of our applications, know how to do that, know the questions to ask when we're writing the requirements, when we are looking at our timelines and when to engage penetration testing and how long it's going to take to mitigate problems if we find them. This is all really important to a lot of our customers. So thanks for answering that one, Serge. There's another one in here about just sort of overall training. So I'll take the first part, and maybe Serge, you can answer the last part, and I'll vocalize it to you here as we go. But there's a question on kind of the range of training. Serge has mentioned a few times. We're going to talk a little bit more about the SANS Security Awareness developer training and what that looks like, and the library, and how do we deploy it and all that. But there was a question specifically about some more advanced training, right? In the SANS ecosystem. So Serge, would you mind just kind of explaining a little bit about the courses that you teach, and SANS penetration testing courses, and other courses that are relevant for developers? We're going to focus the rest of the time on the training the large development teams on the key things about OWASP, and scaling that out to very large organizations or even small organizations. But a quick nod out to what you teach and some of the other SANS courses and certifications would be great, and I'll pop some stuff in the chat to answer that question too.
Awesome, and thanks for that. I appreciate backing me up with that. So personally, I have or do teach just not even a handful, 3 classes over my 7-year tenure with SANS, or teaching for SANS. I started with SEC 542, and that's Web Application Penetration Testing ethical hacking, and that's, as the name implies, very focused on offensive security, specifically as pertains to web applications. So less focused on development. Over the years, me teaching it probably well over a dozen or two times, it feels like, I occasionally had developers in that course. Maybe 10% of the students were from development background or coming at it from the perspective of defense, but it was very, very focused on offensive security, offensive application pen testing. If you're testing, the security of an application, how would you break into it? So the developers logically then took that knowledge and tried to apply appropriate defenses to deal with those attacks. That was Sec 542. Highly recommend that course. Another one is and was Sec 522. It used to be called Dev 522, Developer Dev, and now it's Sec 522. There's a huge rewrite of that just took effect. It's way more focused on cloud, from an application security perspective and cloud-based integrations. So I always thought of that course, and I always describe it to people as kind of the opposite of 542. Sec 542 being penetration testing for applications, and 522 being defense for applications. So a lot of the attacks we talk about in 542, we just go through almost every single one of those in 522 and say, here's how you defend against it. SQL injection, here's how you would defend against this. Here's what a parameterized query is. Here's what you do for cross-site request forgery. You have the same site cookie. You have this little bit of randomness. You check that token, so on and so forth. So we go through every single one of those type of attacks, not one-to-one per se, but we strictly talk about defending against very common web application attacks. Definitely recommend that course as well. That is Sec 522. And the last course that I have hands-on experience with as teaching specifically is one I'm doing right now, which is Sec 488. And that's all about the introduction to cloud security. And wow, we cover so many different topics in there. Focus on Azure, AWS, and Google Cloud to a lesser extent, from network security to our deploying organizational units to IAM, a little bit about penetration testing. There's many different facets we cover. I can't even remember all of them, despite the fact I'm teaching it this week. There's a lot. So that's Sec 488.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you for that. So, Serge, I know you got to get back to class here relatively quickly. So, and I think that's all the questions I've seen come in. If you all want to hear more from Serge, drop the questions in. We'll definitely break towards the end, but we want to make sure you all understand what's the starting point, right? From everything that we just heard from Serge, how do we actually get this needle moving for the entirety of our development teams, scaling from all the way from, new people that were, newly hired out of college to maybe we have some development experience, but not quite sure what to do with security, and then Serge just talked about the very, very high-end SANS courses, multi-day courses that, as you advance in your career, people will be wanting to graduate into, et cetera. And so that's what we're going to talk about very, very quickly on the tail end of this call. And we're going to introduce, for all of you who don't know, some of you I know are our customers and know about this and you're more interested in the roadmap call, but bear with us for just a couple slides. We're going to give a very quick overview of the SANS Security Awareness Developer Training. So the SANS Security Awareness Developer Training, I'm going to walk you through really quick. It really is all about what Serge was talking about. Knowledge is key here. All about training developers in secure coding techniques, how to recognize current threat vectors in web applications and also other types of applications as well. And ultimately the outcomes are why a lot of our customers do this with us is ultimately skilling up their staff to build defensible applications, okay? That's exactly what Serge was just talking about, right? These vulnerabilities are the top 10 in the real world, right? And we need to build applications that don't expose ourselves to those vulnerabilities, otherwise known as defensible applications, right? Satisfy PCI compliance. There's both obviously a clear application security aspect of the PCI standard, as well as training end users, which we do in our end user training at SANS Security Awareness as well. Teaching top design flaws, and ultimately really adopting a culture of secure application development. We can't really overemphasize that, right? When you think about real lasting behavior change, it really is about adopting a culture, and shifting left is part of that cultural improvement that we want to start seeing, that all our SANS instructors teach about in some of the courses that Serge mentioned. So a really quick overview of the library, and then I'm going to hand off to Jacque and then come back to me. This gives you a sense of all of the content that's in the current library for developer. I'm going to talk a little bit more at the end about the new stuff coming, particularly for OWASP, as Serge has been writing a fair bit of that content. The 2017 OWASP Top 10 version is all in the library today, and we are right now working on the 2021 version that Serge just talked about. We've got a whole series on modern approaches that Serge wrote, looking at key secure coding principles in modern software development, such as cloud, APIs. We've got a whole series on classic issues, so we get into common software vulnerabilities that really aren't the top 10. Talking about more sort of desktop applications, et cetera. We've got a whole series on mobile. We've expanded our OWASP Top 10 training, as Serge mentioned. It's one thing to learn the information, it's another thing to apply it. And so we have these new interactive course or modules that will help developers take what they've learned in the video courses, apply it in a simulated environment before they go apply that in their real world environment. So we've got 5 coding languages available for that. We are continuing to add to that library of simulations. We have a new one coming out here relatively soon, and then much more coming out next year as well. We have a whole track on top design flaws, a whole track on threat awareness, and a whole track on the software development lifecycle. But I didn't want to give you too much about the product, because what I really want to get to next is Jacque taking this product line and applying it in the real world for skilling up our developers, role-based training tracks, and really honing in on mature programs that drive that culture of secure application development. So Jacque, if you wouldn't mind taking the floor and let me know when to move on to the slides.
Great. Thank you so much. Welcome, everybody. So nice to have you all here today. My name is Jacque Kakareka. I've been with SANS for a little over 4 years now, and I lead the client success team here at SANS, and I also head up operations. So as such, just a little bit about my team. What we do is we work with all various clients of different sizes to help them implement programs, whether it be their end user content, their developer content, and help them take things from something that's a non-existent program and grow it into something that's more mature. So really everybody, every single one of you, right? You're doing more than one function for your organization. You're not just there working on developer training, right? You've got probably about 50 different hats, as we all do, right? So putting these into practice can be really difficult. And to have some insights in how do I do that, what's important to do that, well, that's what my team does, but that's what I'm here to also help you understand a little bit about that. What do I take into consideration, and where do we go with this, and why should I do this, right? Carl, if you want to go to the next slide, that would be great. Thank you. So in rolling out a training program, right, I've seen clients, I've worked with global clients that have hundreds of developers, whether they're on site or they're contractors, to organizations that have maybe 10, 15 contractors. As such, we take a lot of things into consideration. So we look at things like, hey, what's that cadence? What kind of time do people have? What can I get buy-in for from, leadership and other areas? And well, what is important in this as far as each role or each product line, so to speak, as I'll call it, right? What are those areas that they need to train on? So let's look at that. How do we do that? Well, start talking about that. Looking through and evaluating, right? So what is our culture? What does that mean, right? So how tolerant are they of bringing in more training? What timeframes can I utilize? So looking at those initiatives that are also going on and any of those deadlines and other competing priorities that are happening. So as such, let's look at those, right? So how do I navigate those? Start thinking about, is it best to roll out a smaller chunk of content monthly, or can I get away with doing something maybe quarterly? I can't get everybody to do something monthly, but maybe on a quarterly basis or even biannually. any of these solutions, in my experiences and working with all of these clients, is it's better than just an annual training. Why? Well, what do we all do, right? We're all used to being in high school, college, and all these different training programs that we do. And as such, well, you start getting towards the end and there's an assessment, a paper to write. What do? You cram that in, right? You know it so well for that. And then you get down the line and maybe there's some updates to that information, or you crammed it in and now you're just not remembering it. So keeping it top of mind, whether it is end user or is as it is in that technical kind of thing, what is it that they really need to know and how can I keep it in front of them? That's why I like these more digestible chunks that we can now put in front of our developers and have them walk through this content. Carl, if you want to go to the next slide, please. So great. So what are these? What do these look like? So, well, let's think about those. We've got all of these levels, all of these roles of people, right? So mapping out what it looks like that each of these roles may be involved in, and what is that knowledge extension. So that varies from really organization to organization. So talking through that, okay, our junior developers, what's going to be important to them? We've done some basic mapping of that, and then we kind of talk through that a little bit. But let's look at that. Junior developers, things around OWASP, right? We heard that importance that Serge was talking about, and I'll never match his knowledge as far as that. And I'm not even going to attempt that one. But here, let's look at that, right? We map this out, and we've mapped this out with the input from Serge, right? So OWASP, going in, and we have these interactive modules. So now it's that hands-on keyboard type of a thing. It's putting it into action versus just giving them information. That is really one of those keys too to an adult learner, is putting things into action, and especially in this developer area, right? Then we want to walk into securely using APIs, top design flaws, right? Not going to talk through these. As you can see these on the screen here, that's that methodology, right? Walking through it and creating tracks for training, for learning and expanding. So I've had clients that have come in and said, yeah, we are doing this because we have to, right? Because there's a compliance feature to this. Well, now they're moving into this new thinking of, well, went into this, hey, this is going to be that piece that's going to help me get that contract. And that was the thought process with many clients for a while. Hey, I can prove this great developer training program, and that's helping me get that additional piece of work with somebody. It's helping me get that contract that is going to grow our organization, right? Then they move into, now we're starting to get them more proactive. Let's think about this. I want behavior change. I want people really thinking that next step, and I want them prepared to take the next step and to graduate and move into a more productive or a higher role, I'll say. All right. So that would be in looking at these tracks and seeing how they align with your organization and helping them grow into those. Carl, hop on into the next slide. I'm kind of skipping through a little bit this, just in interest of time. I want to make sure that Carl gets there, but Carl, next one, please. And what we're going to talk about here is, oh, you did, is then you can talk about those developer product specialized tracks, right? So cloud, mobile, DevSecOps. So now looking at these, and I'm going to say, but lack of a better word, chunking them out, right? Looking at them and saying, okay, cloud, do I roll these out and basically provide a content area on various cadences, or do I give them these opportunities as optional opportunities? So many of the clients are thinking about these as, hey, this is your area of expertise, but I'm going to provide this opportunity for you to grow into and learn more about these. Getting a little bit of that cross-training and growth perspective here. Some of the biggest things we want to also think about when we're doing our programs is keeping it positive, right? Getting that buy-in from your leadership. So if you don't have leadership supporting you and promoting this, you're not going to have any programs going anywhere, right? You need everyone to know that they're doing it as well. I think I'm all about, hey, I might be, at this senior leader, senior developer type of a role or such, but I'm doing this too. I've been through that and I can have that discussion with you. So that's also really important, is that connection there. Training is a badge of honor. In this developer role, I've found especially developers really carry that knowledge more than some of the other areas. And they love to dive into new opportunities and, a little bit deeper in. So keep it as a badge of honor. Keep it positive and promote it, and then as well reward them. And I don't mean reward as in, hey, here's, a financial reward, but reward them with accolades, with an email from a manager. Giving them some of that feedback, that positive feedback and recognition will go a long way to your developers absorbing this information. It will also then help them want to take more of this and put it into application. And what you're going to find is putting together this strong program is going to take you into, you're going to see that end result in your product, in your work, and you're going to see how it is impacting and benefiting your business. So really dedicate to it, map it out, take that time, communicate why you're doing this, what the opportunities are, and then just plan it and commit to it. So
awesome, Jackie. Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for that. We've only got a few minutes left, and I'm happy to rush mine because I really wanted you all to hear from Serge, go as deep technically as you wanted to, from Jackie, all the best practices and the incredible experience she brings to the table in making these programs effective. I love what you said at the end in terms of really encouraging a culture, right? By recognizing great work along the way. There was a question in there about badging. And yes, with all of our developer training and the SANS hosted LMS, you can actually start to do that, digitally through your LMS with badging and progression through the training and being able to earn along the way. So just so you all know that it's available in the solution today. So I'm going to just wrap us up. I know we only have a few minutes left, so I'm going to go really, really fast. You all met Serge. We have some great new stuff coming from Serge. We also have Dave Holzer, who's also a SANS instructor and a SANS fellow, even helping us with the next generation of our developer training. So this is a little bit of a sneak peek as to what's coming out. And I want to start it with the OWASP top 10. So we looked at the 2017 list, we looked at the 2021 list, and it has changed, and there's some significant changes in there. Also, we heard from Jackie about best practices, and we've been hearing from more and more of our clients to say, look, we are looking to skill up our developers over multiple years. We really want to hone in on employee retention. We want our developers to feel like they have learning paths and they have growth paths within our organization. How can you help us do that? And so one of the ways that has influenced our product thinking is to actually break up the OWASP top 10 into 2 full-length courses. So the current library for the 2017 list has 1 full-length course. It's relatively long and dense, but we recognize that a lot of folks are hiring people out of college, maybe taking folks are kind of getting into software development from IT. They might not have any exposure to secure coding at all. And so what's coming next year, early next year, is an OWASP fundamentals course that is going to target the junior to mid-level developers. It's about 12 videos, about 5 minutes each video, 20 possible simulations covering 5 coding languages. And we're going to do the same thing at a more in-depth level, targeting mid to senior level developers and architects. Here's a quick way that that's packaged according to Jackie's best practices. We're going to package it up in 4 different modules. You could deploy that annually or quarterly. The quarterly module looks like this, where you'd have, one thing a quarter where you get an intro video, maybe a couple vulnerabilities, and some quizzes, and then of course a language-specific simulation. And then you can assign these out throughout the course of the year, wrapping up the course by the end of the year. And of course, you can always do it annually for those that are, running annual training and really trying to adhere to your auditing section, etc. But what else is coming? And I'm wrapping with this slide, I promise. We didn't get to more Q&A. If you have them, let us know. We'll email you back. But Serge mentioned shifting left. We have a whole new track coming for this that is dedicated to instilling that kind of a culture. All the different roles involved: Scrum Master, QE, DevSecOps, data engineers, product managers, etc. And a whole new refresh on our threat modeling. So you heard Serge talk about this and how important it is to do those exercises with your team to ensure that you are actually building defensible applications. A whole new series on threat modeling, and for those of you that left, really excited. We are going to be building out an OWASP team challenge, building on the knowledge from OWASP training courses. The team challenge is going to be designed to be like a fun way for your team to compete and show off their skills, building some team camaraderie, giving people something exciting and fun to do. And we are planning that for October Cybersecurity Awareness Month, so you can leverage not just your end user training and your end user fun games, etc. in your program, but also very similar style team challenge for October for your software developers. So with that, I want to thank you all for coming. I will stick on the line. I know Serge has got to get back to class. If you can hang on just another minute, Serge, to see if any other questions come in. Jackie, thank you so much. Thank you all for attending. I see it. We're quickly dipping off, but if anyone wants to drop a question in, we will hang on here for 2 minutes. And we thank you all so much for your time on this Thursday. Okay, let me check the question panel here. Yeah, the only other one was about the roles that interact with the OWASP requirements and training that's appropriate. So I think we missed that earlier, but I think Jackie covered that. So thank you, Jackie. We are going to adjourn. I don't see anything else coming in at this point. So thank you all again for your time. Serge, thanks again for taking your lunch break during teaching the SANS course to join us here today. We really appreciate your time. All right, thanks everyone. Have a great day.